Hello everyone, I hope all is well. If you have not yet joined this channel, please do so. I want to take you on a journey that you will learn and I'll get feedback, and I'll also learn more as I go deeper into historical issues that affect Jamaica and the Caribbean. I'll touch a little bit on technology because I think we need to know. But today I want to talk about a topic that we all know, but I want to go deeper into the understanding of who was this man and what he stood for. We call him a national hero, but I think he was even called a prophet. So let's go. What some people in America called back then the most dangerous black man in America. Let's get started. I want you to start by picturing this. It is August 1920, and you happen to be in New York. This is the emergence of the Harlem Renaissance. Everything is changing. You're standing at 135th Street, Lexon Avenue in Harlem. You have the sax playing, people dressed up, everything is going well. The streets are packed shoulder to shoulder, from curb to curb, and they're waiting on someone. 25,000 people are blocking the roads, dressed in their finest clothes. They line the avenue, and it was practically summer. Some were waving flags, not the star and the stripes, if you understand what I'm talking about. They were flying red, black, and green banners. You've never seen this before. It's new to you, and a parade is coming. And you know we are going to be playing the music, because music is a part of us. But this is not a celebration about July the 4th or honoring heroes. It's something that white America has never seen before, and they are worried. You know, sometimes when you're celebrating, some people are looking back and they're wondering what you're celebrating about. Black people were celebrating themselves for one of the first times in their history. They were celebrating their own nation. They had thoughts about where they were going to go. They were now celebrating their own power, their own consciousness, their own future, something that they have never talked about. They cried for years, centuries. But some were still not feeling home after they were emancipated. At the front of the parade rides a man in a military-style uniform adorned with feathers. Just imagine that. Must have been colorful. His name is Marcus Garvey, and he is feeling the presence of the people because Garvey has worked. And I want to take a step back because as Garvey rode in, we had one person, J. Edgar Hoover, a young official in the Department of Justice, calling him the most dangerous man in the United States of America. A black man, a Jamaican. And here's my question to you. How could this man from Jamaica be so dangerous? What has this man done to the United States? What was the danger in this man that the United States devoted years to destroy him? And let me tell you this, when that happens, you're going down. Regardless of what you think, you're going down, because that's the system. Now, to answer this, it's not an easy one to answer that question why they want him to go down. But we have to dig deeper because that's important. It reveals something that is profound, connected to power and race. I live in America for the past 14 years. I do understand a level of what's happening, but not in Garvey's time. Of course, I wouldn't. And the real threat to America is the racial order. Yes, to understand Garvey, you have to understand the movement. In 1919, something was happening. Something that would revolutionize the United States of America, of course. Black soldiers were returning from war. They had fought to free other countries. They had fought for democracy abroad. But they came back in their uniforms, and to prove their patriotism, they were let down. They came home expecting something. They expected something from the United States, at least recognition, at least respect, at least basic human dignity for standing up and wearing the uniform. Instead, when they came home, it was a red summer, and the sun must have been hot because everything seemed to be heated. And 1919 was the worst wave of racial problems in the United States. Yes, it was. It was a turning point. White mobs attacked black communities in over 30 cities. They were just going in and burning things and wrecking everything. In Washington, D.C., white veterans hunted black people in the streets. That was happening in the United States of America. And in Chicago, a black teenager drowned after being stoned for swimming in Lake Michigan. Just think about that. Meanwhile, the Great Migration was transforming America. You see, people wanted to move from the South to the North because the South was awful. It was the worst place to live based on what people said. And hundreds of thousands of black people were fleeing from the Jim Crow South to northern cities, like places like New York, looking for jobs, security, and most of all, their own dignity. But they were finding that Jim Crow laws were practically everywhere. It was a different suit. They had segregated houses, job discrimination, and not to mention the police. They were out to get them. Police brutality everywhere. And the intellectual black leaders were debating. It was a strong debate. What should we do? And historians and, of course, enslaved people have always asked. So one person, W.D. Du Bois, he was a voice of reasoning. And he talked about civil rights. He said that we should prove that we deserve equality. Prove? How do you prove that you deserve equality in a system that doesn't want you to be equal? That's my thought. And Booker T. Washington, you know what he was saying? He was saying, let us think about economic self-efficiency, education. Prove again that we can contribute. We have to prove every step of the way. But Marcus Garvey stepped on, and as Jamaicans are, they are very radical in thought. They're upfront. We speak the truth. And according to a friend of mine, the truth needs no help. And he came up with something radical. He said, we are not begging white people for anything. Why should we? And I say to myself all the time, why should I beg to be placed in a position? There's no need to. I know my competences. I know my ability. And that was what Garvey was saying. He was preaching, know your value. And that was the problem. Yes, it was a problem because we were not begging anymore. We were rejecting the issue of begging. We did not want to beg anymore. And I know sometimes it's hard. Jamaicans don't beg. They're proud. We're coming from a nation that we are proud. So every black man must be a leader. No matter how brilliant you are, you should have courage also. We were operating in a framework that we assumed that white people, we had to get the approval from them. And that was necessary for us to move on. They were asking how we could convince that white people in America that we are worthy. That's what the others were saying. But Garvey was saying something totally different. We're not begging, we are building. And when you start thinking that way, even in your life, that you're not begging, you're building, it changes your mindset, it changes your outlook. He preached radical nationalism, not integration. How can you want to be integrated with a system that doesn't want to integrate with you? But he was talking about black self-sufficiency, and that was radical. He was talking about a separate black economy, and that was radical. He was talking about black people building their own business, owning their own banks, and owning their own shipping line. And that level of independence created problems. He told black people several things that elevated them and allowed them to think more rationally. He preached that you are worthy. Stop waiting on white people for you to realize it. Just remember you're worthy. Black America heard him. His Universal Negro Improvement Association, guess what? It reached over 4 million people. Yes, just imagine a man from Jamaica coming to the United States and reeling that power of 4 million individuals. Can you imagine if Garvey had social media? Can you imagine social media existed that time? How many followers Garvey would have? But the largest black movement today in America's history Garvey created. A powerful man indeed. So when we look at Garvey and we look at his world, we can see that Jamaica should be proud, and a lot of Americans, black Americans, they know about Garvey. White Americans, however, they look back, and what they saw in Garvey was terrifying. Black people didn't need white validation. That was what Garvey was saying. And this created a problem. Now, reason two, he built real power. He was not a man of just talking. He was a man of action. And he built. He believed in building because he was not just going to talk. And by 1919, he launched Black Star Line, a shipping company owned by black people, of course, because that's what was Garvey's thought. He wanted black people to own things. He wanted them to be their own crew. He had black transportation persons moving things, passengers and goods. So he sold shares for his investment in the Black Star Line, and people bought. People who were seeing the importance of owning something, they bought in. Many of them bought thousands of shares in the product. So he was building and utilizing these individuals in what he was doing. Think what this meant at this point in time. In America, black people couldn't ride on a bus. They were taken off. They were not allowed to do certain things. And someone comes to you and say, you know what? You can be anything you want to be, but you must have your power. Garvey was promising them, you'll own the whole darn ship. This was economic power. This was the ability to move on. And he was saying this right up front. Not talking about white-owned banks for loan, but doing something for ourselves. Not applying for bank-owned companies to give us jobs, but employing ourselves. That was a different sort of talk. He was building alternatives. He was building a pathway for others to follow. And that terrified white America. It terrified them that someone was changing the whole economic sort of atmosphere. Because economic dependency meant political independency. So you know what? J. Edgar Hoover understood this. He understood the risk that was of Garvey, of course. And that's why in 1919, he created Negro Subversion Section in the Justice Department, Bureau of Investigation. Now, of course, precursor to the FBI. Note his primary target was Marcus Garvey. Now, let us talk about some aspects where people kind of get confused. The Back to Africa movement. And I think we need to step back because a lot of people thought that Garvey wanted to move everyone back to Africa. But Garvey argued that people of African descent should build a nation in Africa. He didn't move away from that, specifically in Liberia. And he thought about that because he wasn't saying everyone should move back. Not that every black American or people or Jamaicans had to physically move there. He was talking about that. But there should be a strong, independent African nation. That's where we came from. And that's what he wanted to make the connection to. And that would be our homeland, a protector for black people worldwide. We had that. Anything went wrong, we could go back. And I think right now people are saying, I wish I had Garvey's thought. So if I left Jamaica, I would be able to return based on what's happening. White America heard this and thought, good riddance, we got rid of them. But they missed the whole point. They did not understand what he was talking about. Garvey wasn't suggesting black people run away. He wasn't suggesting that. He was just creating a pathway for another option. He was suggesting that they build international power. International power would mean that they would be able to bargain more. A black nation with its own military, with its own economy, with its own diplomatic relations. Just imagine that. He was imagining a world where black people had options. At that point, the options were limited. You see how far we have had to come and still having to fight to continue. We're not running away. That's negotiating leverage. So when someone knows you have option, they treat you different. And that's what Garvey was trying to say. Reason 4. He exposed the truth about integration. Now, a lot of people have gone through a lot of stuff. We're talking about segregation, integration, inclusion, and you know what, everyone has thrown out the word inclusion in the United States. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I have to tell you the story. In 1922, Garvey met with the Ku Klux Klan. Can you imagine? Garvey meeting with the KKK. And that didn't go well. So I want you to pause and think about the implications. I know, stay with me, don't go anywhere. No, W.D. Du Bois and others were upset. They were furious that Garvey had gone to meet with the KKK. Just imagine, Garvey has gone to meet with a set of individuals that are killing black people, lynching them. And they're thinking and saying he's a collaborator. How could you sit down with a man who has been lynching us, black Americans? And they seem to have not forgiven him. Now, but here's where Garvey's brutal logic comes in. And I want you to bear with me. If a set of individuals don't want you to become a part of them, what are you trying to be a part of them still? At least the KKK was honest. They didn't want us here, and that's fine. Neither do I want to live in a place, he was saying, that hates me. So we have something both worked out if we were to have our separate places. Let us work together for the same goal, separation. Now, what was this strategy? Was it wise? Probably not. It was a political disaster, morally questionable, because you know, for us to move in a society, we have to have inclusion. So Garvey exposed something that was true, but something that was problematic, and a quest for integration assumed that white America wanted black people as equals. To this day, in America, I will say that white America, in many cases, don't see black individuals as equal. Hence, we have the problems in our law system and justice system. And Garvey was saying they don't want us, they never will. Let's hope that is not true in another 10, 20 years. So why are we organizing the entire freedom struggle around their approval? That's what Garvey was saying. They don't want us. So if they don't want us, how are they going to approve us? The question made everyone uncomfortable. It still does today. The question is, do they want people who are different around? The government had to stop him, and that's the reality. They had to stop him, and that's what they intended to do. By 1923, the United States government had spent over 4 years investigating every aspect of Garvey's life and his organization. Just imagine, intense investigation. And they searched and they searched and they searched. Finally, they found an opening: mail fraud. The Black Star Line was failing. Ships were falling down. Money was mismanaged. Garvey had all these things to manage. One man couldn't manage it, right? So he must have depended on others. Government charged that Garvey had used mail to solicit investments. And that created a problem. In 1923, Garvey was convicted. Yeah, he was convicted. All his effort, all his followers had to bear that. And in 1927, he was deported to Jamaica. But the question is, was he technically guilty? Maybe. The Black Star Line absolutely had financial problems. So did other business. But here's what we know. And we have to reflect, because now it's a sad portion of the story. The government wasn't investigating white people and their businesses or businessmen with the same scrutiny that they did Garvey, as you can see in our society today. J. Edgar Hoover didn't devote years to taking down white men and their shipping companies, yet he did that to Garvey. They prosecuted Marcus Garvey because they wanted to stop Marcus Garvey. They wanted to stop the movement. He was powerful. But let us not forget, in countries where individuals want to stop people, that's how they do it. Because he was teaching black people something dangerous, according to them. It wasn't dangerous for us. Here's the reality of studying Garvey's work. Garvey tells us that we need to do one thing: be self-sufficient. He advocated for justice. He was dangerous because he was wrong. He was dangerous because he had a message. His economic vision was actually quite sound. self-reliance, the ability to move on and own. He was dangerous because he made black people believe in themselves. And they didn't need white people's permission to do so. They didn't need white people's permission to be powerful, to have value in themselves. So just think about it. He taught many individuals the need to have self-belief. Think about every other civil rights tragedy. It depended on one thing. It depended on changing white people's mind, convincing them that we belong, convincing them that we are the best at certain things, right? And even today, it is said that as a black person, you have to work 4 times as hard as a white person to achieve, appealing to their morality rather than their humanity and their humility, waiting for them to grant you the right to do certain things. Garvey said, you're all waiting on white people to change. Instead, build your own economy, build your own institutions, build your own power, build your own economy. That's what he was preaching. So when we have the power, we don't need to beg. When we have the power, we can build. When we have the power, we can do things that you thought you would not be able to do. And that is a population, a black population, that will never need white approval. Garvey was extremely powerful. And because of that, he was seen as a threat. And as we go forward, from now on today, remember what Garvey said. We don't need permission to do certain things if you believe in yourself. As we can see the landscape changing and geopolitical boundaries being drawn, we have to understand that Garvey's work continues today for self-sufficiency within our Caribbean sector. When black people say we're going to build our own platform, it changes the world. It changes humanity. And it creates a vision for business and our own networks. I want to say thanks for joining me. I'm really moved by this story because I do see a lot of things in the United States. Sometimes I will not comment, but we have to ensure that we uplift ourselves to every extent. That's all for now. Never fear. Always push on. And remember, you don't need permission because you're already free. You need to move on. The question forces us to confront is freedom something you ask for or something you build? And that's all for now. Thanks for watching me, and please remember to subscribe.